welcome to Liz Rocks and Stuff. I'm Liz, and this week I am going to be tumbling some pottery. So, the first thing we're going to do is break some bowls. Now, I got these bowls from Goodwill. I think I paid $1 or $2 for them. So, nothing too expensive or, precious or anything here. I'm just gonna break these up and see if I can tumble them since I'm still on my rock tumbling break at the moment. And I have that extra 1 pound tumbler that I'm not using to tumble rocks anymore. This is what I'm gonna do with it instead. So, my setup for breaking up these bowls is a cardboard box. Now, I've taped up all of the flaps because I didn't want any little shards getting up underneath those flaps and then getting all over the place. So I have the box, a hammer, and safety glasses. Always need safety glasses when you're breaking things like this. So all I'm going to do is throw this bowl in the box and just start smashing it. This is actually somewhat therapeutic. As far as like size or anything, you just break them down till they're the size you kind of want them to be. Now, my first attempt at this, I think they were just a little bit big. So I did end up going in and breaking some of them a little bit more. But as far as, what size pieces you want, it's entirely up to you. Probably going to depend on what you're doing with them. So now you might be thinking, well, what can you do with tumbled pottery shards? Some people use them for mosaics, making like tile for mosaics. You can use them just in art pieces. I'm thinking I might use them in some, like little decorative stepping stones. Maybe doing some crafting with my kids with them. There's a lot of things you can do. So I broke up that first bowl. Now I'm going to break up this second one. And this one has a little bit of a texture on the outside. So I'm curious how that's going to go. And I'm also not too sure how long to tumble these for. So I was looking up some different methods for this. And some people said just tumble it for a few hours. Some people said tumble it for a day or more. So this first attempt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tumble these for a few hours. I'm going to check on them. And then I'm going to tumble them for a day and see how that's going. So this is stage 2 grit. And I put water in there. So stage 2 grit, I wasn't sure how much to put in here. So I'm going to put 2 tablespoons, which is what I would normally put in for this size barrel. This is, again, my 1 pound barrel, so it's smaller. And I wasn't sure how much to go. I mean, I know that I'm not tumbling this for as long as I normally tumble rocks, and pottery's a little bit softer, but I decided I'll just go with, full strength. So putting the lid on this, and then I'm going to let it go. I'm going to check on it in about 8 hours and then see what they look like. And then I'm going to tumble them for a little bit longer. So I'm just wiping off the old label that was on there. And so now these are my ceramics. So I'm going to go put them on and check on them a few hours later. I think this was probably at about the 8-hour mark, just to see what they look like. Now, I'm not going to rinse these off. I'm just going to pull a couple of them out and wipe them off and see what they look like. Obviously, that grit in there has not broken down. So this is, I just have a paper towel because I didn't want to use a regular towel on this. So I'm going to take these out and take a look at them. Now, the edges are not sharp. They are pretty well rounded. They probably could have been a little better rounded, and you can see the grit is still on there. But they look pretty good. I feel like you could use that if you wanted to, depending on what your plan is for these pieces. And keep an eye on this one because I'm going to pull this one again out after the day, and you'll see what happened when I tumbled them for a day. I do like the look of these, but I just wanted to see what would happen if they tumbled for a little bit longer. So now I'm going to pull out one of the blue bowls. You can see it's still a little bit shiny, and the edge on those weren't quite as rounded as the other bowl. I don't know if it's just a different type of clay or what, but those didn't have quite the same roundedness as the other bowl. So now this is the next day, and this, I should not have let it tumble for as long as I did. That was a mistake. I should have taken them out after just a few hours, and you'll see why I say that. So I'm going to dump these out. There's a lot of grit still left over in the bottom of that barrel. And it was difficult to rinse them out. So now you can kind of see what I'm talking about. A lot of the pieces, I like how clean the edges are. I like how worn off the edges are, that there's a little bit less color around the edges, but you can see the color on the actual flat surfaces also wore off quite a bit on most of these pieces. Not as much on the light blue bowl, but definitely this is the piece I showed earlier. Almost all of the color wore off of that. So I'm going to dump these out. I'm going to let them dry, and we are going to see what they look like. They did change dramatically once they've completely dried. This is my favorite piece. That's the little logo on the bottom of the bowl, but it just broke perfectly like that. That's my favorite piece. So they look okay now, but they are still very wet, so they need to be dried off. This is what they look like once they are dried. Very matte. I'm not too happy with that. I know that these are matte because the glazing came off, and that's to be expected when I'm tumbling them. I just didn't expect the color to change quite so much, but it is what it is. This is an experiment. I also know that I let these go way too long. So you can see this is one of the lighter blue. It did wear off a little bit on the back, but there's still some shiny in that little ridge, which I find kind of interesting. Not really surprising, but interesting. You'll notice these have a little bit of a sandiness to them. I think that's just sort of some of the clay that's come off as these have rubbed against each other. All right, so I am going to try this again, and in this time I'm going to make some changes. The first thing I did is these are much smaller pieces. I've broken them up a little bit more to make them more about 2 to 3 inch pieces instead of, in some cases, 4 to 5 or 4 inches or so. So these are a little bit more uniform of a size. I'm also only going to put 1 tablespoon of the grit in instead of 2. And even that was maybe a little bit much. I have seen some people say that they tumble without grit, that just the action of the pieces rubbing against each other is enough. So that's something that you could try. I'm not going to do that. The grit worked just fine. And then I'm also only going to tumble them for about 8 hours. So we're going to see what the final result is with less grit, less tumbling time. And so they tumbled for about 8 hours again. And I'm going to dump this out. Looks much the same as it did last time. The grit obviously hasn't broken down, so it is sticking to the pieces a bit. And so I'm just going to get these rinsed off and then show you what they look like. So depending on the look you're going for, depends on kind of how you're going to do this. These kept a lot more of their color as far as it rubbing off. So this is a piece of the bowl. You can see it is matte as expected. And there's a stark difference here. This is on the left, the one that tumbled for a day. On the right, just a few hours. You can see there's a big difference in the color, but that's because the one on the right is still a little bit damp. I wiped off the water, but it still needs to dry out a little bit. And at the end, I'll show you 2 pieces that are fully dried out next to each other, and you'll see the color is pretty much the same. There's no difference as far as what the color looks like once these are dry. The main difference is, one, there's more of the clay exposed on the edges on the one that tumbled longer, which is a look I actually like. I prefer that. But also, in the end, if you tumble them for a day, they are going to lose a lot more of the color on the actual surface. So you're going to run that risk. And it also is going to depend a lot on the bowl, because as you can see, The light blue bowl that was probably a little bit higher end lost a lot less of its color. So these are the two. On the right tumbled for or on the left tumbled for a day, on the right tumbled for just a few hours. The color is pretty much the same. And so yeah, thank you for watching, and do with this information what you will.